it's almost like a compulsion to keep them entertained.
Yes.
Right? And I feel like that sometimes as well. Oh my God, what are we going to do? And they'll wake up in the morning sometimes and say, okay, Saturday, what are we doing today? And I think my biggest piece of advice on that is we have to let them get bored. That's
like
the first thing, right?
Okay.
That's when the critical thinking skills and the critical thinking processes actually start to spark.
Toast and potential.
So we tried to kind of
all these tests.
I retired, and obviously, but you know, thankfully,
I think with adults, we've lost that human connection even more than children because we just don't want that noise anymore. We think that's our only escape, or at least in my case, sometimes that's the reason. It's my escape, and I actually sometimes run away from the human connections because I just can't. I can't handle it. So how can I just find another way to sort of blow off some steam and to get that alone time without the tech?
Yeah,
it's a difficult one. I know it's
but I will say, I mean, your level of awareness and insight on how you needed to use it and when you needed to use it already shows me that you're probably less likely to go absolutely nuts with it, right?
Okay.
Maybe that's not the case, but the fact that you're saying, I kind of needed it, you know, given my day, given that time, and I recognize that it was a bit, you know, maybe it was a bit too much, but it just allowed me, and this is the question that we discussed earlier, right? What does tech do to me, and what does it do for me, right?
Okay.
Now, if that hour online left you feeling more anxious because you were just looking at everyone's perfect lives and wondering, well, what happened to mine?
Right.
Then it's creating anxiety, and then it hasn't worked for you. Then it's done something to you. But if you say, you know what, that was really good. It allowed me to just be in my little nothing box and just recoup and just kind of get my energy back and just relax. Great.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with that because that's what you needed at the time. And I'd say, you know, as long as it's intentional and you know what you're doing with it and why you're doing it, then it's okay. But if you said, you know, I didn't make it to work that day because I just kind of, you know, I'd lost track of time, or I didn't send out all those emails and finish that blah, 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 whatever it was, because I just got lost down this rabbit hole and went on a whole trail of information and found out something about somebody's life who I'm never going to meet again.
Exactly,
which is often what happens. Then that's probably more of a problem, right? And also if you said, hey, I'm spending all this time online, but I still feel isolated, then it's not doing anything for your need for human connection, right? And a lot of adults now are coming out and saying, this is making me more anxious, right? So instead of being on social media throughout the day endlessly, we recommend sort of chunking it, right? So you go, okay, I'll check maybe a little while in the morning and a little while in the evening, and pace it. And that way, the information that comes through you is in these two little windows. And I always, you know, I feel this about the news as well. I think it's too much. Do you know what I mean? It's too much coming at us at one time. So growing up for me as well, it used to be Gulf News in the morning, right? A couple minutes, you know, and my parents or my dad would say, hey, read this little sports article with me, 10 minutes, and he'd spend his time on there. Mom would read the newspaper. And then the news was done and you could do what you needed to do. And then in the evening, there was news on TV, and that was how we consumed information and news. But now it's all the time, and if it's distressing news, I don't think we're equipped. I mean, we need to work much harder to try and regulate. I feel that personally as well. If I keep seeing negative events, and some of them are really horrific with some of the things that are happening in the world today, it's not easy to just put that away, switch off, and go back to whatever you were doing before, because it affects our emotional state. So we have to be able to chunk and say, okay, I'm going to dedicate some time. And my personal policy now is if I'm already feeling a little bit, like, you know, today was a tough day, then I'll even just try and stay away from it, because I know that there's a possibility that I'm going to see or hear something that's going to be distressing. But just to be able to chunk, you know, and also just ask those two questions again. What is it doing to me? If I feel worse off, then maybe I need to reconsider if this is actually helping. But what can it do for me? Well, maybe I can actually then get online and message my friends and connect with family who I haven't spoken to in a while, or even just see what's going on in someone else's life, and all this kind of stuff that pops up, without feeling like it's draining me or leaving me more anxious than when I started.
Right. So we mentioned anxiety, but what are some of like the other psychological effects it could have? So, I mean, in terms of sleep, in terms of focus as well, because we do know that it's been affecting, kids and adults alike, and in terms of like their focus, their ability to focus on certain tasks or even work or school.
Yeah. So we're desensitized now to attention, and that's come out in the studies as well, because everything is happening so quickly and there's so much coming at us that ability to just focus on one thing for an extended period of time has diminished.
Right.
And there's brain activities and things that neuropsychologists and neurologists and psychologists and psychiatrists and teachers and parents are trying to figure out, well, how do we keep exercising memory? And because memory and attention are connected, memory and focus are connected, right? There was an interesting study that was conducted. So they had two groups of people, and they said, okay, both groups have to write out these trivia questions. And they told one group that your questions will be saved. And they told the other group that once you type them out, your data is going to be deleted. It's going to go. And then they did a recall test to see which group actually remembered the questions. And the group that were told that their information would be lost had a higher recall than the group that were told it would be saved. Because if I don't have to make that effort to remember it, maybe I won't. Oh. And so I'm not using my brain in that way. I'm not exercising the memory centers of the brain. And eventually, if you don't fire it, you lose it.
Wow, that's
so
interesting.
Just something as simple as that. You need to remember this, and it's going to be sort of a memory exercise. Tells you to focus on it a little bit more, and you'll be more intentional with it. Right. Because I often ask, and we have conversations about this all the time: is technology making us less efficient or more efficient? Is it making us more efficient in some ways, but emotionally we're connecting less? What's the point of that?
Right.
But aside from memory and focus, sleep is a big one. I think the last statistic that I saw was 87% of adults take their phone into bed with them. And I've done that often.
Yeah, I mean, we're all guilty of that.
But what's the impact of that, right? So we know that blue light affects hormones and the way melatonin is produced, which helps to induce sleep.
Right.
So that's one thing just right off the bat. Just the blue light itself is keeping us awake. And then we know that sleep is foundational. It's foundational to physical health and psychological health. If we're not sleeping, we're not going to be well. It doesn't matter how organic our food is and how many antioxidants we're popping. If we don't sleep, we're not functioning well. Mm-hmm. And that's always one of the big questions that comes up in any family meeting or with any child who seems to be deviating a little bit from an expectation. And even just anyone who says, I don't feel like myself anymore. A lot of the time you find when you dig a little bit deeper, they're just not sleeping. So then we say, okay, let's look at sleep hygiene and try and make it a little bit boring, okay? Because that's what everyone's like, I don't want anything boring anymore, I'm done. And just get into bed with a book or draw or do nothing. Have you ever thought about that? Do nothing in bed. And they go, oh, how can I do nothing in bed?
Exactly.
Well, maybe that'll help you sleep.
Yeah.
Right? So we know that sleep and insomnia is it's a major problem right now.
Yes.
There's lots of reasons for that, but bringing technology into bed is just stimulating this entire cognitive process of thinking and analyzing and wondering and imagining, and that's just not the time for it.
Of course. And I spoke to a doctor recently about sleep and the importance of sleep, because I did have some difficulty with my sleep and my sleeping patterns. And she was talking about how sleep can actually toy with your emotions. You can be a very impulsive, a very angry, a very aggressive person if you're not sleeping well, let alone with children. I mean, the tantrums that are usually, thrown by a child could be because they're not sleeping well, or they're overtired, or they don't know how to express the exhaustion that they feel. And we as adults fall into that trap as well. I mean, there were times where I felt like I was just always anxious and angry, and it was mainly because I wasn't resting. My body was just on high alert the whole time, and I wasn't getting the rest that I needed. And it's a vicious cycle. I mean, you're adding more and more consequences and more obstacles along your way by not sleeping. And I think it's crucial, and I think it is affected by tech, and I think it's the one thing that we need to work on. And I did hear a podcast before where the person speaking said, it's always good to just leave your phone in another room. Why did we get rid of those traditional alarm clocks? They were the best thing a person could do to themselves. I mean, having your phone there, I mean, the fact that it lights up throughout the night, even if you're not waking up completely, your brain is wired, and you know that something lit up next to you. And he was saying, completely leave it outside of your room. Don't even have it in the same room. I mean, then there's the whole idea of the waves and like not having it next to your head. I mean, the whole night. I mean, we're not even going to get into that, but we're just talking about sleep. So I think there's a lot to talk about that when it comes to the bedroom, like just bringing in to bed is the number one cause of like insomnia. I think.
Absolutely. I think
87% you were saying.
We underestimate the circadian rhythm and how important that is. And obviously things like travel and stress can affect it. But you'll recover better from that if your circadian rhythm is more established. Right? And sleep is the only time when our body repairs and regenerates. It's also the only time that information that we learned is assimilated. So if you don't sleep, and we keep, telling our students this, and they go, "No, I'm okay," but it's true, right? And then we know that teenagers need more sleep. And, the younger you are sometimes, but also just if you're stressed sometimes, you actually need more sleep, but it's difficult. There was a great study that came out, and we've started to do it since whenever I remember. This is the irony, that the study was talking about memory, and I have to remember to do this to help my memory. Lighting or a diffuser with aromatherapy and essential oils for only 2 hours during the night improved memory, and it was a statistically significant number. I don't remember exactly what it was. So I thought, great, well, we're all kind of struggling because we live in this distracted world right now, so many things competing for our attention. I know that my memory can be, a bit wobbly, and so let's light this essential oil at night or put it in that diffuser for 2 hours and see how it goes. So we've been doing it based on the studies, but it's important because your senses are paying attention to something even when you aren't, right? So we think that it's just switching off, but it's not. That's actually when the real work happens. Right. That's when the work begins, and it doesn't work if you sleep at 2 or 3, because that circadian rhythm then changes. By 4 o'clock, your brain is doing different things. Right. So if you don't give it that sort of 10, 11 onwards break, then it's not really restful. There's not much repair. There's not much regeneration. And so the majority of sleep needs to follow that pattern.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So right now, it's really hot. I mean, it's very difficult to do anything outdoors. And with kids, it's also very difficult to entertain them all the time, especially indoors. So like with after school and, trying to get them to engage in different activities rather than sitting in front of a screen, an iPad or the TV or even a computer or a game or anything. What can parents do? I mean, that is not stressful, but at the same time is serving their children rather than, just a quick fix of just giving them a screen.
Yeah. I love that question because I think it's a big one. It's not easy because we're also in the last sort of decade, maybe decade and a half, there's this, it's almost like a compulsion to keep them entertained.
Yes.
Right? And I feel like that sometimes as well. Oh my God, what are we going to do? And they'll wake up in the morning sometimes and say, okay, Saturday, what are we doing today? And I think my biggest piece of advice on that is we have to let them get bored. That's the first thing, right?
Okay.
That's when the critical thinking skills and the critical thinking processes actually start to spark, right? So what do I do? It's so boring. I will often send them back and say, I really don't know. Can you go think about it and come back? And I promise you, if I don't intervene, they will find something to do. and they'll
Okay.
do something for an hour, or they'll do something for 30 minutes, but they will figure out something and they'll come back. So it's important to give them tools, but it's also important to let them be. Because if we keep scheduling every minute, scheduling every hour, and just plugging it in, there's no sense of what's going on in my inner world and how does that work and interact with my outer world. And we need to teach them to make that connection. But if I'm always feeding and it's one way, then I'm not allowing my child to make that connection.
Yeah.
So actually when they come up to me and they say, I'm bored, I go, yes, that's great. And they go, oh, Mom, that's so mean. And I go, okay, well, here's an idea. But a lot of the times there's no idea for me.
Right.
Can you go have a think and come back? If you really, really struggle, maybe I'll suggest something, right?
Okay.
And it doesn't always work. Sometimes it really leads to, oh my God, everything is so boring. It's the end of the world. And that's okay.
Right.
That's okay, right? I have less anxiety about that now than I did when my children were younger, because I also I felt like I had them, and this messaging was, you have to stimulate and you have to do this, and yes, you have to do all those things, but they also have to have nothing time, right? So that's probably one of my biggest advices: give them nothing time, but also nudge them in this direction, give them things to do, but don't feel compelled to fill every single minute, because when they come up with things, it's exciting. So we came home a few months ago, and I couldn't see, the dining chairs were all over the house. I mean, they weren't around the table anymore.
Okay.
And there was all these things. The house just looked different.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, I'm tired today. What's going on? And I walked into the lounge, and they'd made a fort.
Oh,
and so they put chairs together and bed sheets and towels, and it was a mess. And obviously I was like, oh my God, who's going to clean this?
Right.
But they had fun. They did exactly what I wanted them to do. And then the fort had different purposes, right? So, and then by the end of it, they were like, can you leave this here for the whole week? And I was like, well, we need to sit at the dining table.
Yeah, I know.
But I get it. I like the fact that now the focus is on that. Right. And so one day, I don't even remember, but one day it was about a Greek something, and then one day it was like an Indian fort, and they were under attack, and there was a window,
Amazing.
and there were like these little stickies on the window. So they just they worked with their environment. But I know if I'd said, oh, do you remember we have Monopoly, or do you remember that we have that thing to do, they probably wouldn't have come up with that.
Of course. And they let their creative juices just flow. Yeah. I mean, dining table chairs and bed sheets and
do it.
Let's put something together. I love that you mentioned that, because we had a child psychologist as well, Dr. Haneen Jarrar, and she said the same thing. She sometimes they have a limit, her kids have a limit with tech and screens. She'll take them away, and she's like, you guys know, your hour's up. What are we supposed to do? Find something. And she'll just leave them around the house. And she said the same exact thing that you said. And I mean, I trust you both. But I love that. And I think a lot of parents, as you said, are always thinking of ways to keep their kids entertained. So what? I mean, just let them get bored. Let them think of something. Even if they sit there and just stare out the window, let them observe what the nature looks like. It's okay. I mean, we were like that as kids. I mean, we found ways to keep ourselves entertained. I mean, it wasn't always the TV, and it wasn't always, not screens until we were in middle school. But I mean, it's okay. And I love that you said that. And I think it hit me as well. I mean, it is okay if they're bored. So what? I mean, it's not the end of the world.
Right. Yeah. There's other things that we added. We got one of those table tennis things indoors. So the dining table, you just stick a net on that. And then, I can't help be a psychologist at home. But Dr. Daniel Amen did brilliant research on what is it called? So just racket sports.
Okay.
Right? And what that does for the brain. Right?
Okay.
So, but we can't always run off to the tennis court and paddle and all of that. We did some of that over the summer when we traveled. But when you're at home, and you need to do some of that inside. So the two things that we encourage them to do for eye-hand coordination and all of that stuff is table tennis on the dining table. And they have fun with that. I'm awful. I try to play with them, and they're like, please. And also just a racket and a ball, and just kind of bouncing it around, find a wall. There's so much. But I think the messaging is that we have to do it for them.
Yes.
And that's what we need to change.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Devika, I know that you're so busy, and I know you have your kids and you need to go back to them, and you have the parent job to do after we're done. But before we go, I just want you to say, like, just general advice. Parents, even to kids. I mean, you do deal with a lot of kids in schools. Just general advice when it comes to tech, when it comes to creating human connections, how to enhance it overall.
Yeah. No advice for the children. It's all on us.
Okay.
It's all on us.
Great.
As educators and as parents, we have to figure out ways, and I think the first one would be self-care. We cannot give from an empty cup. We need the oxygen mask on us first, and sometimes that means talking it out with friends and teachers and schools and professionals and just saying, what do you think about this? You know, this is something that I'm just to consult. I'm consulting with people all the time. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And just having conversations around, how was that for you? I think this works for me. And that self-care piece, there's nothing that can replace that, right? And just keeping stress levels in check, taking care of your body, taking care of your mind, breathing. I feel the difference in my day and in my mood when I've done my sort of morning breath work and when I haven't, you know, and that just, things like that, just that mind-body connection, paying attention to it, I think is so critical. And I also think we're at a time now where maybe we need to do less.
Yeah.
And just kind of slow things down a little bit. And in terms of advice, I'd say just, you know, if you're running at a 10, try and jog a little bit. Try and bring it down to a 7 or an 8, because when you're running so fast, you don't see the scenery, you don't see what's going on, and then it's just a blur.
Yes.
The other thing that's very practical, but I say, go back and look at the pictures on your phone. Because that's the other thing that we don't often do. There's memories and there's experiences that we have, but we store them away and we don't always relive them and think about them, right? So, of course, we need to be focused on the present and the future and all of those things. But the connection that we make from going back in time, even if it's just momentarily, and spend time with the family looking at pictures. So sometimes that's actually an activity that we do. I just kind of screen share on the TV. And just say, look at that picture, look at that.
That's
and
nice.
Back to school from 5 years ago, and the kids will go, oh my God, I look like a baby. But yeah, you were a baby.
You still are a baby,
just
but okay.
going back and revisiting memories, I think is important, because then that helps to crystallize the value that you want to keep going, that you want to push forward with.
I love that. I love that. You know, we've hit rock bottom when you have to remind people to breathe.
Yeah.
I think just focus on your breath. I think that's just,
right.
It's an eye-opener. I mean, as you said, when you're running at a 10 and you're just focusing on the run but ignoring everything beautiful around you, I mean, who's really winning? I mean, it's not a race.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Devika, so much.
Thank you, Maria.